If you have a mother who cares for her family in the fear of God, with heavy responsibilities at home, meaning that she may not even be able to attend various church functions through the week, never mind help out and do specific things when there, that woman can be serving Christ and being more faithful in her calling than someone who has the health and can come. The whole point is, do you do it as service unto the Lord in the light of His coming because you love Him and want to further the cause of the truth of the gospel? And likewise too, a good testimony at your workplace, whereby you labour to serve the Lord, not merely man, and you don't do it with eye service, that is serving the kingdom of heaven more than, let's say, a minister or an office bearer who's unfaithful and just does it for show. This is the Christian and Protestant doctrine of calling. Whatever you do it unto the Lord. Every task is holy if done to serve the Lord. The idea is you work for Christ in whatever you do, and you work and labour or trade, the idea of the parable, in the light of His return. You're watching, He's coming back, therefore I work. The Lord's returning, therefore I work. I work more. I work more purely because He's coming back and it will be judged. That's the idea. Then the Lord does come back too, and the time of reckoning comes, the settling of accounts. And before Him come in turn the guy with the 5 talents who made 5 more, and the guy with 2 talents, servant B, who made 2 more. The first thing we have for these 2 servants is the personal word of commendation. Well done. And you've probably heard the line, and it's worth repeating. You won't say well done if you haven't done well. And that's well put. The personal commendation. And then the reward. The reward of grace. Thou hast been faithful over a few things. Because the person with the most gifts and the most talents or opportunities is only dealing with a tiny aspect of God's kingdom at one time, never mind the whole of the Catholic Church, for 2,000 years. Thou hast been faithful over a few things. I will make thee ruler, office of king in heaven, over many things. The reward of grace, God bestowed abilities and talents upon this guy. With God's grace, He used them, and then Christ says, not only did I give you these talents, and not only did I strengthen you to use them, but now you've done them, I'm going to reward you 100-fold more. Well done. And it was my grace in you which did it all. It wasn't merit. The reward of grace. And with this servant B, and whose 2 talents, it was exactly the same. And then they enter into what's called the joy of the Lord. So heaven is here presented simply as a world of joy. You're happy, perfectly happy, forever and ever. And then we come to that other guy. And you we come to the other guy. He that had received the 1 talent took a spade, dug a hole, and hid it. Now, why did he do that? One thought is that he looked around and he says, look, there's a guy with 2 talents. There's a guy with 5 talents. That's hardly fair. I've only got 1 talent. I can't do much in the church. I don't have much ability. And because of that, I don't seem to get good opportunities. And my opportunities aren't very high or significant or important opportunities in the eyes of man. And I'm just sick of that. And I think, where's that spade? And he just digs a hole and puts it in the ground. And then the Lord comes back for this and reckons the accounts, and his time comes too. Lord, says this guy, I knew you were a hard man, austere. You reap where you don't sow. You gather where you have not scattered seed. Boy, he's making the Lord Christ look really, really bad, nasty. And I was afraid. This isn't a godly fear, this is a stupefying terror of the ungodly. And so I hid your talent in the earth, and here, you gave it to me, here's back to you. This word reveals that the fundamental problem with this guy, who is in the outward manifestation of the kingdom of heaven, who is in the professing community of the Christian church, the problem with this guy was his view of God. He didn't work because he had this view of God. Remember, we saw in an earlier parable, the parable of the labourers in the vineyard, where there was a person who worked and did an awful lot of work, but in order to merit. That was an ungodly response. This guy in the church, he doesn't work, or works very little, because you can't get it through to him, and the word hasn't penetrated his heart. He keeps thinking God is a sort of tyrant. He beats you with a big stick. He's angry with you at the slightest little thing. He's not generous, he's not gracious, it's all about law, and he comes after you like a slave driver. And all you can think of about this God is he's cruel. Psalm 18, to the froward, the perverse, thou wilt show thyself to be perverse. And you can preach to the cows come home that God is gracious and long-suffering and abundant in goodness and truth. And after it all, secretly in the heart, I don't love this God. I don't care for him. I think he's a hard taskmaster. And because I don't feel his love in my heart, I'm not going to do anything for him. I'm not grateful, and so I don't do works of gratitude. Why would I do works in the kingdom of heaven and help the kingdom of heaven? And he's the king of the kingdom of heaven. And I feel nothing good towards him. He's a hard man. He's like a man who goes into the field at harvest and expects there to be wheat or grapes, whatever the crop or fruit tree may be, but he hasn't even sowed. Unreasonable and harsh. That's what he thinks, and in the parable, mind you, that's what he says. And the Lord answers and said to him, you are wicked. How dare you think that about me? Wicked. And you are slothful. That's your problem. You're lazy. You're lazy. You didn't want to work. You knew that I did this, that, and the other. None of which is true, of course. That's not the case with Christ. He's a gracious and loving Lord. You knew this, did you? You knew this. Well, at the very least you could have done, if I gave you that money, you could have gone to the bank and invested it and got a decent rate of interest, so at least have something. Putting the money in the hole with inflation the way it is today, sure, I've lost money. Useless, wicked, lazy servant. And what happens to talent? The one talent that he had goes to the guy who has 10 talents. And he loses what he had, or loses what he appeared to have. This verse 29, the moral of the parable, as the moral of the parable with the parable of the pounds, is that to everyone that hath shall be given. That's how God works in the grace of his kingdom. God gives you grace, he'll give you more grace. He'll give you more grace throughout your life, and he'll reward you abundantly in the world to come. He that has, more shall be given. He shall have abundance. But see the guy that hath not. Though he's in the visible church, and he pretends and acts, he's going to lose even what he has, that is, even what he appeared to have. So that he will have nothing. Absolutely nothing.